Ready to start? Okay. Good morning to everyone. Quick introduction. My name is Keith Witherspoon. I'm the Technical Support Manager.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Simon Tyrrell, one of the BMW Support Technicians.
Hi, I'm Keith Chaff, BMW Support Technician.
Just want to run through a couple of things very quickly with you, just to sort of highlight what we're doing today. Obviously, we're covering programming coding today, and hopefully you'll find this very informative, and hopefully it will support some of the things that you're already doing, but obviously highlight any of the areas that you may feel that, hey, I could have done that a little bit better, and I may have had failures because of the way I was doing some of this job, some of the work. Just very quickly on the company. We have customers and obviously and other customers who we want to welcome everyone into the Autologic family. I just want quick information about what we do here. We give technical support. We have the highest concentration of master technicians anywhere in the world. We cover the aftermarket. Apart from obviously you have the manufacturer, you have the master technicians, but a lot of ours are from the manufacturers. So just very quickly, we have an office in New York, we have one in Australia, which cover all obviously fully across the world. The guys here do anything from 40 to 60 fixes working with customers, and they on a daily basis. So we get to see a lot of issues and a lot of problems. By that, we've been able to obviously put this together and make it so we see some of the areas which we've had to address with customers. From that, hopefully this will be useful, and we'll commence with the seminar.
So, as some of you have already realised, the chat is turned on, so feel free to drop any questions to us. If we can catch it in time, we'll answer it there and then. If it's something that we can't sort of answer straight away, we will provide a frequently asked question sheet at the end anyway. So today we're going to be covering BMW programming, best practice, hints and tips. With that, we've got three kind of areas, which is pre-programming. We're going to sort of loosely cover the differences between coding and programming and what version you need to do. Then we're going to be looking at things that can happen during programming and coding, and then obviously what we can do post-programming.
Just very quickly, this always seems to be a bit of a grey area, people understanding what the terminology means, programming and coding. As you can see on the display, you can see two chips. So what happens is, when you have to program a car, what you tend to see is you have there are only three units that will need programming from the manufacturer, from BMW. So that would be the engine ECU, the gearbox, and some of the actual steering systems that we have. Now, when you program, you wipe the chip clean, and you start and you put every bit of data on there. Then you add the coding data after it for the optional extras that it will be needed, and Sam will explain a bit more about that.
So yeah, in a nutshell, programming, as Keith alluded to, is putting the user software in, so it's a bit like putting Windows on your computer. Coding is configuring, so that's assigning the control unit to the car, and that control unit then it knows what it needs to do, so it knows what car it's in. As Keith alluded to, some control units come blank nowadays, so you do need to program things like the engine ECU, gearbox ECU, and steering racks on the latest BMW 5 Series, and we are starting to see them come through on the BMW 3 Series F30 and some of the F20s. Most of the control units that you'll get from BMW, like your footwell modules, car access systems, roof function sensors, etc., they're already pre-programmed, so the user software is in it. You only need to code them, which is basically telling it what car it's going into and what to do with that software. A lot of the questions we do have are around, oh, I need to program this control unit, when actually you don't.
Yeah, that tends to be a misconception, because what you normally find is you're actually programming the vehicle to the same level as the new control unit, not the other way around.
So, pre-programming and coding. So this is where we're going to go through some steps that hopefully that come the end of it, you'll minimise the risks of a programming failure. We can't eradicate them, because unfortunately, no matter what platform you're using, some errors can happen. But if you try and follow these steps, it's going to basically stand you in a good stead for a successful session. So the first thing that we'd always advise to do is just to make sure that whatever equipment you're using is up to date. So for us on the Autologic, we just want to make sure that the CLP version installed matches or is equal to or higher than the minimum version required. Then we're going to go on to a little bit about sort of reducing programming errors. So little bit of a strange one, and not many people do it, but we always advise the battery reset before programming. Keith?
Yes, well, one of the biggest things that we find we're trying to make sure that there's an even flow of clean electricity. So the biggest thing that we need to make sure of that we use the correct charger. Now, Simon will obviously go through the slide with you, but it's very important the way we do things. So by disconnecting the battery, we have to discharge all the capacitors. By doing that, that makes sure there's no interference or no noise on any of the circuits. Very, very important. In our time, we've programmed, literally thousands of cars between us. And we used to spend every day just programming cars, and the most effective way to do it is to follow the set procedure laid down in front of you. And we'll explain that in great detail. It is paramount that you follow this step-by-step guide. We find a lot of people where they have failures, maybe down to various things which we're going to highlight today.
Another thing to also add on the battery reset is a B&W instruction is to do it after you have a failure. So we're now thinking, well, why not do it before? Because like Keith said, it puts the control unit into a better state. One thing to warn you about on battery resets, which some of you may or may not have experienced recently, is there is an issue with the footwear module. It can actually fall over when you take the battery supply away to it. It can even fall over when you try and communicate or program it. It's still best practice to do this out, but to carry the battery reset. But just be advised, you could end up having an issue with the footwear module afterwards. But
you have to follow step-by-step guides, and it may put people off. But I'm sorry, that's not something down to you guys. We have this, very rare, but when it happens, it happens. And I think it's got to be something that you have to follow the instructions, because although it may be one unit, that was going to fail anyway. The guy could have a battery replacement and it's failed. We would always strongly recommend this because of the way when it's passing the information from the actual tool through to the car is the best way. And as I said before, we have done lots and lots of programming. I've seen guys program vehicles in the dealership and have lots of problems. I never seem to have any problems because I follow the strict guidelines that BMW laid down.
So the next thing we're going to talk about is an improved battery charger. A lot of the program errors we see come through are when the battery voltage has been just too low. So I don't know what you guys are using out there. We would, the picture you can see is of a BMW approved battery charger, but we also supply a GYS. There are other makes available out there, but you need to make sure it's capable of supplying a stable voltage for programming. Most BMW cars need to be programmed with a voltage of 14.6 volts. An exception to that are the later sort of BMW S-Series M-Power cars with the batteries of lithium-ion construction. If you put 14.6 volts to that, some relays will trip and you'll basically lose ignition. So those vehicles, your battery support unit needs to be set to about 13.5 volts. Then we're going to talk about programming with faults. Essentially, you should need to do a quick test first, make sure there aren't any faults currently stored and currently present that could hinder a programming session. We don't want to see anything like CAN faults. If you've got CAN communication errors, or that's the nature of the beast, is if the program is going to utilise the CAN network. So we really don't want to see any faults like that. Faults that are allowed are maybe if there is like a sensor portability and the latest software is going to fix it, or if it's a new control unit and the fault is it needs to be programmed and coded.
We're also looking for communication errors here during this quick test and quick clear. That will be highlighted later on in the CIP process if a controller fails to communicate. Ideally, you don't want to be programming a car where you have communication error.
Then we always advise you to open both the front doors and roll the catches, and open the boot lid and the tailgate and roll the catch. The reason for that being that is obviously we need to be inside the car with the autologic plugged in, so we want the door open. The boot lid and tailgate is if in the event something does go wrong, most of the batteries are in the back of the car, and it's a lot easier to gain access to do a battery reset if the tailgate is already open, rather than to try and maybe backfeed a line or try and gain access to an emergency release cable or climbing through the back seats. Next thing we always say is to...
I was just going to interject, sorry, after you finish that straight, Sam.
So the next thing we're going to say is to reduce the loads inside the vehicle, so make sure that the interior light is turned off.
Yes, I wanted to bring up that this is very important because obviously when we try and charge, another thing about the charger I'd like to say is, obviously we've got a very discharged battery. The best thing to do is get it up at least above 70%. We don't want a flat battery because obviously there's a lot of electrical interference being passed from the car just by charging the vehicle, but also if we've got anything with consumers on, this is obviously causing the battery to turn out and work a little bit harder. So by switching all this off, this means that obviously everything stays stable, stays low level, and everything stays in a good place for the charging and programming.
So moving on with turning things off, just in case the radio's on, please turn that off. Heater fan could be on, please turn that off. Remove any audio devices connected to any USB auxiliary slots, or if you have an iPod interface, make sure all of those are disconnected. Once we've done all that, we are now basically ready to continue into a programming session. The car should be set up in a way that we're minimising the risk of a programming error.
So something to be aware of is routing of the cables. So with the door open and the catches rolled, make sure you run the cables through that opening. Do not run the cables through the windows, because during a window initialization, if it takes place as part of the program process, you could damage some equipment. Also, another thing to be aware of is leaving equipment on the windscreen. Should a wiper activation take place, again, you could end up damaging equipment if it falls off the vehicle.
The reason why the wiper activation can take place is because it will shut the CAN network down, and the way that the BMW system is operated and how it routes the wiper signals, it utilises various CAN networks to actually make the wipers come on, and it's like a fail-safe mechanism that BMW employ, that the jump spots will activate the wipers. So yeah, as Keith said, please make sure that the wiper arms aren't up and there's nothing in the way that can cause any damage. Pad mode.
Yes.
BMW G Series vehicles. Now, the way that the BMW have sort of utilised their terminology or the procedure of turning ignition on has now changed. It's not really a dedicated Terminal R, Terminal 15 anymore. The latest G Series vehicles can have anything up to sort of 30, 40, 50 control units in the really high-end ones connected, and they've decided that they don't all need to be woken up at the same time. It's there to design on energy consumption and ultimately improve fuel economy. So when you get in the car, you won't notice, but not every control unit's woken up. So if we're going to program a vehicle, on a G Series vehicle, we have to put it into a mode where all of these control units are awake. BMW call it PAD mode, which stands for Testing, Analysis and Diagnosis. For us to be able to get the vehicles into that mode, you have to press the start-stop button 3 times very quickly within 0.8 seconds, like 1, 2, 3. You'll notice that all the lights come on, and then I think there's a little check control which just comes up, but it basically is in then PAD mode, which is essentially full ignition.
Yeah, make sure you check for that check message as well before you start doing any programming, obviously, because the ignition won't be on.
High voltage vehicles. Before support will be provided for that, basically we have to have proof that you are a minimum level 2 in the IMI sort of high voltage qualification. Reason for that being, that's what BMW say. So we will need copies of your certificates and also photographic ID. When we do any sort of support in terms of programming high voltage vehicles, we will also be utilising the rescue lens function, because we need to A, confirm you are who you are, and B, we also need to confirm that when we guide you through the procedure of making the car safe, you get that check control message you can see in the bottom of the screen. Now, when you make the car safe and the check control message appears, the high voltage system is de-energised, the car is safe to work on. If that check control message doesn't appear, our support will stop, because basically we can't guarantee the car is safe. And also, there's massive safety implications that go with that. We will have to, we'll be stopping support, and the only thing you can do then is contact a 1000-volt electrician, a DC trained electrician, to verify that the car is safe. So the next guide you're going to see, there's a few slides. It's basically in and around utilising the Drive Pro and programming. We have obviously released this tool fairly recently, and we've got some of our existing customers, some of our new customers that sometimes may not have programmed with it or are new to programming, and we just wanted to show you the procedures of connecting the Drive Pro up, going through the motions of gaining access to CIP, requesting a file, and going to the area where you can download or send the file and download the file. So before you begin, make sure you have all the cables required. So for this guide was based on an F-Series car. So for an F-Series car, we need the cable that has the OBD connector, one end, the serial connector, and an Ethernet cable at the other end. And we're also going to have to utilise this little white USB to Ethernet adapter, as you can see in the picture. Next thing we want to do is to plug the battery charger on and make sure it is set to the right voltage for the vehicle that we're working on. Like we mentioned before, most of the BMW cars, we need to have it connected to set up to 14.6 volts. If we are going to be doing one of the later N-Power cars, need to reduce that voltage down to about 13.5.
I've just seen somebody's just put a quick question there. Russell Kirk has just asked 20 amps or below 20 amps. I would always state every time I'd rather see a charger reading below 20 amps. Taking anything above that, I want to be comfortable to start programming. I've always tried to make sure the battery's in a very good state of charge and the charge is not working too hard. That's the way I've always done it, and it's very, very successful. So, good question. Thank you.
So now we're going to connect the cables. So at the Autologic end, connect your serial cable to the serial port. The Ethernet sort of flywheel that's coming off it, you connect the sort of Ethernet/LAN cable end into the relevant port on the white adapter, and then that goes to the USB slot that's next to the serial port on your Drive Pro. Then, without sounding too obvious, we're just going to plug the OBD socket into the car. So with our Autologic turned on, we're going to select the Drive Pro European function. Now this is quite a key thing. We want you to automatically determine the vehicle. Please do not go in like model series, like 5 Series, F10, etc. It is quite important that I think it has a better way of actually working out what the vehicle is if we determine it automatically. Once we go through, you'll see this next screen coming up. It's just some vehicle information screen, just to make sure that the VIN is displayed, the model type, and the country details and everything is displayed. Now we want you to perform a quick test. This is moving back to what we said in that sort of little programming sort of setup guide that we had earlier, and that's just to make sure that we don't have any faults stored, i.e. communication errors or CAN errors, which are going to potentially cause us an issue. Review the quick test report. Again, just making sure that faults that are there aren't going to cause us any issues. And then if they will, please delete all the fault entries. So now we're going to, when we've exited the quick test, we're going to go and click CIP. Read the disclaimer and click accept. Now it's going to perform a cable check. This is basically because on the S series cars or some E series cars that have the CIC variant, the program is actually done over an Ethernet protocol. So we have to establish an IP address communication between the Autologic and the car, and this is basically making sure that that IP address connection is present. Now you're going to see a screen, and basically it's going to, the process is going to talk to the car. It's going to reference the CIP version that we have against the version that's installed in the control units, and it's going to work out exactly if a control unit needs to be programmed and coded, if it's out of date or not. Basically, the same thing's going to happen. It's working out. We use the term integration level. That's like a BMW terminology, but it's the age of the software that's installed in the vehicle compared to the age of the software we're trying to put in. Vehicle status report will come up next. This is where, if there are any control units that need updating and programming, it will be listed in this vehicle status report. If there is a control unit with an error, it will be highlighted at the top under the recommended actions. Now, errors you might see that is, like my colleague alluded to earlier, if it fails to communicate, it will be in that top section. If it's an incompatible control unit, where it could be a used control unit which just isn't compatible for the car, it will be in that top section, the recommended actions. If you have any errors, those errors will have to be corrected or the CIP session will not be able to move forward. So if it does say that the control is incompatible or there isn't communication, even if that's not the control that we want to try and code or program, that will have to be fixed first before we can move forward. Then we're going to, you can close that down, there'll be an X on the top corner, so we close the status report down and we're going to create what is called a measures plan. Now the measures plan is essentially where we can individualise the coding and programming session and do what we want to do with the car. The measures plan, we can select whatever we like. If a control unit is new and it has to be coded and programmed, it would already be pre-selected for you in the measures plan. But if you want to do anything else off the back of it, another couple of control units to go with it, basically, this is where we can sort of tailor the session that we're going to carry out.
So just going back to the question quickly, so Russell, it was 13.5 volts for the M-Power cars. And Levy, based on your question, late M-Power, we're talking about F series, 3 series and 4 series.
Like the F84
yeah.
and things like that. You'll know that the lithium-ion battery, when you go into the boot, lift up the boot cover to get access to the battery, you'll see like the relay sort of packing. I think it's sort of mounted to sort of different sort of visual little connections going to it. You'd also know if you went to pick one up, to be fair, because they're only 10 kilograms in weight compared to the rest of the normal AGM batteries. So once we've created a measures plan, it will take you to the page where you can view the measures plan. If something has gone wrong and it's pre-selected loaded controls that we don't want, we can always close that back down, go back in and change the measures plan. But hopefully you'll see everything that we want to perform on the car. We need to then close that measures plan down. We need to save it, and then we need to exit CIP before we can send the order over to us. You can't see what the slides are saying. But yeah, so once we've exited the measures plan, what we're going to do after we've saved it, at the bottom right hand corner is going to be the exit button. So there's an important thing is we need to exit CIP, otherwise we won't be able to go on to the programming and download manager section. So then on the left hand side of the Drive Pro, on that blue column, we need to hit the Drive Pro European icon. It will then take us back to this tile display where the different options are available, and then you need to select the one in the bottom right hand corner, which is the module programming and download order manager. Now from there you've got 2 options. You have a send order or a download order. So the first thing we need to do is send order. Now, at this point, hopefully we're all signed in, but if you're not signed in, we won't be able to go into this. Just make sure you're signed in on your AutoLogic unit. When you go into the send order function, hopefully you'll see if you look at the second picture along, I know it's quite hard to see, but that's a vehicle with a chassis number. Hopefully it's the right chassis number for the car that you want to work on. You highlight that box. The next page on, so do you want to send this order over? Just give it a quick review and click yes, and the order will be sent. Hopefully, in about 10 or 15 minutes time, you will receive an email, which goes to the email address that's registered to your Drive Pro unit, saying that your program is ready to download. However, you may get an email back with text a little bit like this saying something's gone wrong with your order, and please contact AutoLogic. Now, the reason for this order authorization, there are a few sort of reasons why we've had to do this. So as you can see, there's a list of control units. I'll go through them one by one. So the CAS 2 and 3 variants are a very sensitive control unit. When they are updated, they have a habit of falling over, and the EEPROM gets damaged inside. From our point of view, and like a BMW point of view, it's happened using a pass-through device as well, is that the CAS will have to be replaced. Now, people can get these repaired. I know people can get these repaired, but it's not a service that we can advise on. So we would always like to discuss with you first whether you really need to program the CAS. Most people want to program the CAS, in my experience, because they think it's going to fix a steering column fault, where in actual fact it doesn't. It just allows for a bigger fault tolerance of the actual steering column not being faulty, So we advise you of that, but you're perfectly within your rights to do it, and we will always release the file to you for a cache, but we just need to let you know that it could crash first. Second control unit is the Combi, which is more talking about, I think it's Combi for BMW F10 series cars. They again have a habit of falling over when they are updated. So same thing applies. We'll talk to you about it first, and if you're happy with the risks, make sure it's worth a conversation with your customer before you click the program, because if one of the control units does go down, it's a conversation that you need to have with your customer, but we will release those files to you.
The big thing about all of this, sorry to just interject one moment, when we speak to you, first of all, we want to make sure you're okay with it, but we want to make sure that you carry out the correct procedure. Again, it's the battery discharged, and all the capacity discharged on the car. Make sure that you've got a good charger on it. Make sure the levels are good. That's what we want to make sure that you're putting the car in the best state that you can do to make sure that it will be successful when it goes through. It can still fall over, but we want to minimise that.
Third one on the list is the sort of later style head unit variant. So the CIC, the head unit high, head unit NBT Evo, and the head unit basic. Couple of reasons why we don't supply these files. The main reason is currently that the server isn't sort of big enough to send out the file. The file size on these are huge, and they can be over a gigabyte. So as it stands at the moment, the server can't send that file out. Now, second reason, which is probably equally as important, is that these control units do like to fail when you update them. Anybody that is sort of fresh out of the dealer can verify this, and if anybody has a pass-through that's watching this, you also know that these can fall over when you update them. So the idea being of putting it on order authorization is that, basically give us a call. We'll explain the reasons why. The reason why the files are too big, but for those of you who don't know, is that these later head units, they do have animated menus. So you've got the service menu, the owner's handbook's animated with little mini videos in it. You've got efficiency dynamics, driving modules, mode, where they can sort of display torque graphs and stuff, and it just pushes the file size huge. Some people that may be programming with pass-through here would have really, depending on your internet speed, it can take up to an hour to download these files on pass-through anyway. So file size is a big issue. So that's the reasons why we don't send this out. TCB is another one, so telecommunications box. That's mainly on the latest sort of F&G series cars. It's another one that is a very, very fragile control unit. So, and depending on what function the TCB will operate on the car, can also push the file size over the limit as well. So that's another one that we put on order authorization, and we won't be sending the file out for.
Can I also just interject? Sorry, I want to just say that the communication audio systems throughout all of our careers, we've always had issues in the dealer. These same situations, same faults, same issues that you're having or you've experienced yourselves. We've also had that in the dealership. So it's not just purely down to the aftermarket that's seeing this. So be aware that they replace every time a car comes in. They do fall over far more frequently than you would believe in the dealer. So yes, isn't just after the aftermarket.
And then lastly that you'll see on there is the N16 variant. So this is a controller that's fitted into the mini range, so the R sort of 5X series minis. We can program a controller that's already fit into the car if you want to update the software level. What we can't do, unfortunately, is program a new one in, because that requires an FSC enabling code to allow the engine to rev correctly. And unfortunately, we are unable to get those FSC codes. They have to come from BMW. That also falls into place with the head units at the top. We can code a new head unit in because they don't need programming. They already have the software in them. But in order to release certain functions like the navigation, Bluetooth, DAB, you need these enabling codes. Moving forward in the next couple of slides, we will show you how to get those enabling codes for the head unit. But the enabling code for the Mini N16 engine, unfortunately, we can't get. That has to come from BMW.
So sorry, just to switch back to the questions quickly. So Lee, yes. No, there is not an individual charge for each car programmed. That's part of your programming package that you purchase from AutoLogic. You do not need a pass-through box for coding. That again is included, whether you have advanced software or pro software. that's all included. Paul, it's a very good question. As you know, we always look at ways to improve our software going forward, and it is something that we can note and take to the team and see if it's something that is possible. And Richard, can you program second-hand control units? Yes, you can program second-hand control units. There are exceptions to this, so be very careful. Immobilizer-related control units, gearboxes that have an immobilizer connection, you will not be able to fit second-hand. But always check the compatibility, basically, in your initial report to see if the part is compatible with the car.
We've had situations, haven't we, where people have fitted gearboxes into a car, and you'll start the vehicle, but you won't be able to select a gear. A lot of work for that to happen. So we'd always advise that people obviously call in to make sure there's anything they are hoping to replace or update.
And generally, as a rule, we tend to see that F-series cars, no matter what the control unit is, when you look at your vehicle status report, it says it's incompatible. There is some kind of chassis protection. So the older cars, it's not so critical, but on the later cars, and I think even on moving forward to G-series cars, the head-up display, the cluster, the head unit, and the CID, they have their own security link. So the people who have had a problem with them being stolen out of vehicles, and it's very, very hard to get those to code and programming. So once we've sent the order, once your email has come back, as long as it's one of the order authorizations, you can then go in and to the still in the download and programming manager section and click the download function. The same screen will come up. The chassis number will be there. Just check and make sure it's the right chassis number for the car, and then you hit the download. That will install the files in onto your Drive Pro unit. All you do then is you go back, connect to the vehicle, go back into CIP. It will say a message plan already exists. You wish to continue. You click yes, and it will take you through, and you can start programming. So during programming now, so what to watch out for? It's not too many things you can watch out for during programming, and basically what we want you to do is make sure the car is in an environment where people aren't going to come on and jump into the car and start turning the radio on to check for a function you compare it to another car they're working on. We don't want anyone to sort of maybe trip over battery cables to make sure that the trip hazards are reduced. Basically, we don't want any interference with the car. We want it to be left alone to do its thing. When you get towards the end of your programming session, you might find that a window pops up, or it's frozen at step 4 or 6, step 8 or 10, step 10 or 16, and it will say deactivating coding mode. Now, we don't 100% know what's occurring during this point. We don't know if it's an IP address dropping out or maybe a command issue, but normally we would advise you, if you phone us up and it's only just happened, we would say, look, try and leave it for as long as you can, about half an hour minimum. If at that point it's still frozen and it's stuck and it's not moving at all, then it's time to interject. Now, on experience on this, it's fairly safe to pull the autologic off, turn the ignition off on the car, take the battery charge off, let the car shut down. We want the start button light to go out minimum, but ideally, especially on F and G series cars, they go to sleep quite quickly. So if you can leave it sort of 15-20 minutes, the car should go to sleep. Then you should be safe to turn the ignition back on and just give the car a functional test, because in experience, what you wanted to achieve during the coding program session has actually happened. It may be that it's when you do a quick test afterwards, because it's always better off doing a quick test, that you see that the circuit controllers are in transport mode, which is what the deactivating code mode was doing, was taking controllers back out of transport mode. So we can actually do that without having to go back into the CIP function, go into service functions, and there'll be a button, it's the top button on the screen on the left, it's delete transport mode. It'll ask you if you want to enter dealer telephone numbers, just cancel that, don't worry about that. Allow the procedure to page forward, and you'll be able to delete the transport mode in the control units, and that should then stop any issues. In the unlikely event, but it can happen, is that if that sort of freezing action has caused the car to shut down, you can actually re-energize the vehicle. So when to use that is if that deactivating coding mode has happened, you phoned us up and we've left it for half an hour and said, right, you're going to have to turn the ignition off now, disconnect the autologic. If you can only get sort of basic communications back to some control units, and the car does seem like it's shut down, we would then advise you to re-energise the vehicle, which basically is a function that we've created that will go in and it will wake each control unit back up that's kind of stuck in that programming mode.
And a dealer network, you wouldn't be able to do that, so it's something that we've done, so it's a very useful addition to the tool.
So assuming a perfectly successful programming session, so post-programming, we say allow the car to assume sleep state, so pull the autologic off, take the battery charger off, allow the car to naturally assume a sleep state, so minimum start-stop button light go out, but ideally a complete network shutdown. So depending on the spec of the car, say FG series cars go to sleep very quickly, 10 to 15 minutes. Some of the older cars, maybe sort of pushing 30, 40 minutes, but let it assume sleep state. After it has assumed a sleep state, just carry out a quick test. Basically make sure there aren't any sort of nasty faults remaining. You might get some faults related to initialization, so at this point we can go in and sort of carry out steering in stop initializations or window initializations if they didn't take place during the program mode. Now if you have done a head unit, so if you've replaced a head unit, you've coded it in, what you're likely to see is that the navigation is grayed out. Now this is where we're going to be talking about importing FSC code. So in order for certain functions to be brought into operation, you need FSC enabling codes. Now these codes can only come from BMW. You should, if you're using a pass-through device, they should be automatically imported, but we have seen quite a lot of times recently they haven't been. If you're using us, you'll have to get these codes from BMW. You will need to ask somebody, ideally in the workshop, because as technicians, we all had our own S-Gate login, and I've got enabling codes when I was in the workshop all the time. You need a repair kit. So you log on to get somebody to log on to the BMW ASAP site for you. You give them the chassis number, they will request the repair kit, and it will be sent to them in a compressed state. Now what we need is for them to email it to you, still in the compressed state, and you need to then drag it into a blank USB stick, formatted to the FAT32 format, but not a SanDisk, mate, please, just any other, mate.
So just back to the question quickly, Mark. So can BMW refuse these codes? We haven't had many complaints from customers that BMW are turning them away or not supplying the codes. Most dealers are more than happy to work with you.
Some don't realise that it's actually...
And some of them don't actually realise the way of doing it through a USB downloaded, because if you use the dealer tool, it will automatically import the enabling code. So ideally, you want to try and speak to someone who's had a problem using the dealer tool when it's failed to import the enabling code.
We normally find, again, that's a technician, not parts, unfortunately. I say anyone with an S-Gate login can do it, but the people that are more used to it will be a technician in the workshop. So once they've emailed you the FSC repair kit, the top line is if you put the USB stick or your email, it should be like that. You'll see a file, it'll be zipped, and you'll see the chassis number next to it. If you open it up, you'll see the example of the second picture below, which is just all the codes that you need, with the exception of that PDF document that's there. That will be the navigation enabling code. So for us to do this, on an F-Series car, it's a specific function within service functions. If you need to do it on an E-Series car, it's actually an option within CIP. But you drag the codes onto the USB stick, plug the USB stick into the autologic, and then click the FSC enabling codes button.
So just back to the questions quickly. So Adi Cornell, you are quite right. Yes, if you press the start-stop button again, it will take it out.
So once your USB codes are on the USB stick, click the FSC enabling codes button. The screen will just ask you to put the USB stick into the autologic, but you can do it now or before. It doesn't really matter too much. Next thing you'll see is a screen that looks similar to this. Don't worry about importing the wrong code from that list. You won't be able to. Just click enable against each one in turn, and if it's applicable, it will say activated. If it's not applicable, it will remain not activated. Once you've imported all the codes, you're safe to just exit that function. So yes, that is pretty much all we've got to say on coding and programming.
Just to reiterate, I think, just to go through, so the big thing that we have to make sure of when you're doing any updates is obviously setting the car up. So first of all, we want to make sure there's no faults in the memory. We want to make sure that we put the car into the correct state. We want to make sure that the right charge on, and obviously, and make sure the software is up to date on the tool you're actually using. All these things add up to making a successful programming coding of any vehicle. We will have glitches along the way, but as I said to you before, we've had this before with the manufacturers, and it's very useful to know that you're not by yourselves out there. That all manufacturers have the same issues. You just don't get to necessarily see all of it. Hopefully, that's been an informative. I have to thank Keith and Simon for an excellent job at what they've just done, and hopefully, it's been very informative for you. It is interesting. We have a lot more expertise and skills. We'd like to do more of these in the future and hopefully give you more of a benefit of our knowledge and our abilities.
I'd just like to add, going back to the enabling code part, you might find that when the navigation has become ungrayed, then you can select it. It'll ask you for a nav code, or the map enabling code. So you can try the one that came in the repair kit, but most newer head units actually come with the latest map version installed. It's a little bit of an issue trying to backdate it. So my advice would be that you try that code first. If the navigation, if it doesn't like to import that code, you just need to purchase the latest map activation code from VinW. I think they're about £30, don't quote me on that, but they're not very expensive. That will then enable the latest version of the map to appear for the customer.
Just touching back on the question, Paul, yes, that is a good suggestion. The only problem you'll suffer there is if the head unit has been replaced, like Simon just mentioned. So if it has newer map data in the head unit, the old FSC code will be rejected when you try and import the code.
Next slide, if you please, Simon.
Well, and all the other questions that we don't actually get around to answering live at the moment, we can see quite a few are coming through. We will provide an answer to them afterwards on a free question sheet. Okay, so our other services. So part of what we offer is AutoLogic Live. That is where you can gain access to our technical support from all of our branded master technicians for all the models that we support. Various ways of doing that. So you can call up, you can send a case through via the log channel on the Drive Pro and the Assist Plus. And we also have an app, which is quite a useful tool. That means you don't have it's on your mobile phone. We all have our mobile phones, but it's a very easy way of gaining support. We're also looking at providing you a response via the app, and moving forward with further developments, we're going to be able to allow you to sort of call up and add to existing cases. So yeah, the app is definitely the way forward, I think, for contracting. That's why I technical support. We also offer a function called Drive Wrap, which is remote assist programming. So this is where, for certain brands, which I believe at the moment is Volvo and the PSA group, so the French, Peugeot and Citroën, that we will be able to, for a charge, is log on and program the car for you. All you need to do is plug the AutoLogic in and make sure the car is in the right conditions for programming. The rest will be left up to us.
Just so on our last point, I was going to bring up that we are at an event next week, Automechanica. For those people in the UK, it'd be nice to see anyone come over to see. On the stand, we are now demonstrating some of the advanced technology that we're embracing to move forward with supporting the hybrid cars out there. We need to support you, but the way we need to support you isn't from a visual aid. So we're using some of the latest technology, and hopefully we've demonstrated it on Automechanica to show you how we can do that. We can't support, obviously, from a phone. We need to make sure that we get a visual on how you're going through each process and make sure that you're doing it in a certain way. So anyway, it'd be nice to see anyone. If not, please contact us, and we'll obviously feed back to you any information that we have on the latest products that we're doing. Thank you.
Another part of what we're doing is branching out and going into sort of supplying other sort of diagnostic tools. So the biggest thing that we're doing recently is in partnership with Picoscope, which is diagnosis for modern day cars now. We need oscilloscopes, whether it's for trying to locate a CAN fault, a signal error, down to compression text. And the test you can do with the Pico scope is vast. So I'm sure a lot of you are much more familiar with Pico than I am. I'm used to using the BMW iMove. But I have used the Pico. We've incorporated it into our training courses. So any course you come on that I run for BMW will now have Pico in it. It's a brilliant bit of kit, very, very good. And I say in today's day and age, you'll struggle to diagnose the complex faults without them. We also, there you can see in the bottom corner, the GeoWise battery charger. It's one that we recommend. It's perfectly adequate for coding and programming. It's been tested here, and it's what we use all the time.
Yeah, smart charger is what we need. So obviously, the biggest thing is that we need to have something which is stable. And these are well-built machines, and we make these that would deliver the constant level of voltage and current into the vehicle. So that's what you're looking for in a charger, and these have been very good and we've extensively tested it to make sure that they do exactly what we need them to do.
And you can also see there that they're the Cardax. So we're part of the Opus family, and with that we have a sister company, Drewtech. You can also purchase from us the J2534 pass-through devices, such as the Cardax 3, as you can see in the picture. So if you're interested to learn more about our latest products and services, as you can see on the slide, you can contact us in any way possible. We'll always answer any questions that we're able to answer.
Yes. I think that's it. I just again like to thank you for attending the webinar. It's nice, and hopefully it's been useful. I hope you've got a benefit from it. Hopefully, if there's anything that you feel was good, or there's anything that you feel that could be benefit, please send any questions in, and obviously we'll make amendments. But hopefully it's helped you along your way and endorsed a lot of what you guys are doing. We work with a lot of people, and we have highly skilled professionals out there, which we deal with every day. And it's nice to work with you guys. It's always nice to meet you on these events. So it's always nice when we're holding events, you guys come out, say hello. But it's one of the things where we have a very close-knit family. We want to make sure that we look after our customers, and we want to make sure that what we do is helping you do what you need to do to serve your customers. So I thank you from me.
Thank you for me. Thank you for listening. I hope we haven't sort of gone too fast or too quickly, and you've taken a lot of value out of this.
Yeah, thank you from me, and hope you all have a great day.
All the best to you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.